The ancient Sith were a people who embraced darkness and power, their history rooted in conflict, deceit, and an obsession with immortality. Their tale begins not on the familiar grounds of Coruscant but on a distant planet where their civilization first took shape. The Sith were originally a species of red-skinned humanoids, a race known for their deep connection to the Force, though it was a connection not entirely understood. They were warriors and scholars, driven by their insatiable hunger for knowledge and strength. As a species, they were once dominated by a rigid caste system, with the most powerful individuals holding the title of Sith Lords. The Sith Lords were fierce rulers, commanding not just military forces but entire philosophies. The teachings of the Sith were built around the dark side of the Force, a primal, untamed aspect of the energy field that connected all life. Unlike the Jedi who sought balance and peace, the Sith believed in using the Force for personal gain, power, and domination. They saw the dark side not as a temptation to be resisted but as a tool to be wielded. Their approach was one of strict individualism and the belief that only through the exercise of power could one become truly free. The planet Korriban was the heart of Sith culture, a barren, desert world where the Sith Lords built their mighty tombs. The Valley of the Dark Lords, a vast necropolis, stood as a testament to their greatness. Here, the tombs of ancient Sith Lords lined the landscape, each one more opulent and mysterious than the last. Within these tombs lay relics of power, artifacts that radiated dark energy, each carrying the legacy of the individuals entombed there. The Sith Lords who were interred on Korriban were not merely buried. They were preserved as a form of eternal rule. It was said that their spirits lingered in the tombs, waiting for the next would-be Sith to come and claim their power. The history of the Sith was a constant cycle of betrayal, conquest, and resurrection. For every Sith Lord who fell, another rose to take their place. The most infamous among them was the Sith Lord known as Darth Revan. Revan's journey began as a Jedi Knight, a hero of the Republic, but his desire for power and knowledge led him down the dark path. As Revan grew more powerful, he abandoned the Jedi Order, embracing the teachings of the Sith. His fall from grace was not just a personal one but a galaxy-wide event. Revan's reign as a Sith Lord left a scar on the galaxy, with his wars causing countless deaths. He was eventually betrayed, stripped of his memories, and exiled. Yet, even in exile, Revan's influence did not fade. His story was one of endless conflict. He was forever torn between the light and dark sides of the Force. His eventual return to the light only served to further cement his legacy as a tragic figure in Sith lore. Revan's legacy was not just in his actions but in the philosophies he left behind. One of the key tenets of Sith ideology was the Rule of Two, a principle introduced by Darth Bane. Bane recognized the need to preserve the Sith teachings after their near extinction at the hands of the Jedi. He established the Rule of Two to prevent the infighting that had plagued the Sith in the past. Under this rule, there were always two Sith Lords, one to embody the power of the Sith, and the other to learn from them, eventually overthrowing their master to take their place. This cycle ensured that the Sith would always remain in the shadows, waiting for their moment to rise again. The Rule of Two led to the rise of many powerful Sith Lords, each more ruthless than the last. Darth Sidious, perhaps the most cunning and dangerous of them all, rose to prominence after centuries of planning and manipulation. Sidious' rise was not through brute strength but through cunning and deception. He waged war against the Jedi Order, manipulated galactic politics, and sought to establish an empire ruled by the Sith. His actions were not just those of a power-hungry tyrant but of a master strategist who understood the true nature of the dark side. Sidious' path to power was long and deliberate. He first began as a Sith apprentice, learning under the tutelage of his master, Darth Plagueis. Plagueis was obsessed with the idea of immortality, believing that the dark side could be used to control life and death. His experiments in this area were both terrifying and fascinating, as he sought to manipulate the Force in ways no one had dared before. Plagueis' ultimate goal was to create a perfect Sith, one who could live forever. However, his ambition led to his demise. Sidious, his own apprentice, betrayed him, killing him in his sleep. This act marked the beginning of Sidious' rise to galactic power, and it was clear that the Sith were far from finished, despite centuries of suppression by the Jedi. The Sith, however, were not just warriors or politicians. They were also deeply involved in the study of the Force, particularly its darker aspects. The teachings of the ancient Sith were filled with rituals, curses, and a deep connection to the dark energy that suffused the universe. To the Sith, the Force was a tool, a means to gain power, influence, and control. It was through the manipulation of the Force that they were able to achieve such feats as creating Sith Lords who could rise from death or exist as spectral beings. The Sith believed that knowledge was the true power, and they spent centuries collecting forbidden texts, conducting dark rituals, and unlocking secrets that the Jedi would never dare to explore. One of the most feared and revered aspects of Sith magic was the ability to create Sith amulets and talismans. These objects, often imbued with dark energy, were used to channel the Force and enhance the powers of the Sith. Some of these artifacts were said to contain the essence of long-dead Sith Lords, their spirits trapped within the objects, ready to grant power to those who could unlock their secrets. These objects were often hidden away in secret tombs, libraries, and forgotten temples, where only those with the greatest knowledge could find them. The allure of these artifacts was so strong that many Sith Lords were willing to risk their lives to obtain them, believing that with the right artifact, they could achieve ultimate power. The dark side of the Force, in all its twisted and consuming power, was something the Sith embraced fully. To them, there was no greater pursuit than to become a true Sith, one who was above the laws of morality, who sought power without limitation. They rejected the Jedi's code of selflessness, seeing it as a weakness. They believed that in the pursuit of their own desires, they would become stronger, more powerful, and more capable of ruling the galaxy. This mindset led to countless betrayals, wars, and the constant rise and fall of Sith Lords throughout history. Yet, despite their internal conflicts and constant warfare, the Sith endured. Even in their darkest moments, they always found a way to rise again. The cycle of darkness, death, and rebirth was central to the Sith identity, a never-ending quest for more power. This obsession with power and immortality was not just an individual pursuit but a collective one. The Sith believed that through the harnessing of the dark side, they could eventually achieve a form of eternal life. The most powerful of the Sith Lords, such as Darth Nihilus, sought to consume entire planets to sustain themselves, feeding off the life energy of others. Others, like Darth Vader, sought to preserve their loved ones by manipulating death and finding ways to cheat it. Yet, the dark side's promises of immortality often came at a great cost. The Sith who sought to conquer death were often consumed by their own power, becoming shells of their former selves, forever lost in the shadows of their own ambitions. And so, the tale of the ancient Sith continues, a tale of darkness and desire, of those who sought to control the Force and bend it to their will. It is a story filled with betrayal, ambition, and the unrelenting pursuit of power. Despite the centuries that have passed since the rise of the first Sith Lords, their legacy lives on. The darkness they embraced still lingers in the corners of the galaxy, waiting for the next generation of Sith to rise and claim the mantle of power. The Sith's allure was not just in their mastery of the Force, but in their relentless pursuit of dominance over both life and death. As time passed, the Sith began to form alliances, often temporary, with various factions across the galaxy, always driven by their own agenda of power. These alliances were fragile and temporary, built on the understanding that the Sith cared little for loyalty beyond the promise of a shared goal. As such, the history of the Sith is a tapestry of dark intrigues, betrayals, and ever-shifting allegiances. Every Sith Lord, every Sith apprentice, understood that only one could ultimately rule and that the rest were expendable. It was a truth that sustained the Dark Order, as each new apprentice challenged their master's authority, seeking the ultimate position of power. The history of the Sith is full of tragedies, yet their quest for immortality continues to echo through time. Sith Lords such as Darth Plagueis and Darth Sidious dreamed of transcending the limits of mortality, not merely as powerful beings but as rulers of an eternal empire. Plagueis believed that the key to true power lay in mastering the ability to manipulate life itself. Through the creation and destruction of life, he saw the path to godhood. In his efforts, Plagueis experimented with forbidden Sith alchemy, attempting to unlock the secrets that could halt death and grant him eternal life. These dark experiments often resulted in horrific outcomes, with entire worlds thrown into chaos as the Sith pursued their forbidden ambitions. However, the very nature of the Sith pursuit, focused on self-interest, domination, and the bending of natural laws, was its undoing. Plagueis' grand vision was undone by his own apprentice, Darth Sidious. Sidious' cunning and thirst for power were unmatched, and while his master focused on grander ambitions, Sidious bided his time, manipulating events from the shadows. In a single moment of betrayal, Sidious struck down Plagueis, demonstrating that no Sith could ever truly escape the treacherous path they had chosen. Death, even for those who sought to conquer it, was inevitable. Sidious' rise to power marked the culmination of the Sith's long and twisted history. His rule over the Galactic Empire brought forth a new era of darkness, one where the Sith's vision of domination finally manifested across the galaxy. Yet even as Sidious achieved his long-sought conquest, the Sith, in their eternal struggle for supremacy, continued to clash with the Jedi. The Jedi Order, always dedicated to the preservation of peace and the Force's balance, remained the greatest obstacle to Sith control. The Sith's tendency to infight, to betray one another in their quest for the throne, was both their strength and their undoing. The Rule of Two, introduced by Darth Bane, had been meant to curb the destructive infighting that nearly led to the extinction of the Sith, but it also had its drawbacks. There was only room for two Sith at a time, the Master and the Apprentice. This restriction made the Sith vulnerable to ambition, as each apprentice would eventually seek to overthrow their master. Such cycles of betrayal and power struggles often led to moments of weakness, when the Sith were divided, allowing the Jedi to strike back. As the centuries passed, the Sith continued to resurface in different forms, always driven by the same dark thirst for control. They were never truly wiped out, for even when they appeared to be defeated, their teachings, their artifacts, and their philosophies lingered. Over time, Sith ideologies would find their way into the minds of individuals across the galaxy, tempting them with promises of power. Sith lords, whether living or long dead, left behind echoes that would continue to influence the galaxy. Ancient Sith holocrons, mysterious artifacts containing the knowledge and consciousness of past Sith lords, became prized possessions. These holocrons were said to be imbued with the teachings of the Sith, their knowledge passed down through the ages to those who could decipher their secrets. The holocrons contained not only dark rituals and teachings, but the essence of those who had once wielded unimaginable power. The most feared aspect of the Sith's philosophy was the concept of the dark side of the Force itself, a force that could grant immense power to those who embraced it, but at a steep cost. The Sith saw the dark side not as an evil but as a necessary means to an end. The Jedi taught of balance and peace, of harmony between light and dark. The Sith, however, believed that only by embracing the full extent of the dark side could one unlock their true potential. They saw the dark side not as something to be feared but as an opportunity to conquer their weaknesses, push their limits, and shape the galaxy according to their own desires. Sith teachings, passed down from generation to generation, often revolved around the central idea of survival of the fittest. Those who were strongest in the Force were meant to rule. This Darwinian outlook extended beyond the Force itself, shaping the Sith's view of the galaxy. They believed that the weak should be subjugated, that chaos and conflict were natural states of existence, and that only the powerful were fit to rule. This belief was encapsulated in the Sith's iconic mantra: "Through passion, I gain strength. Through strength, I gain power. Through power, I gain victory. Through victory, my chains are broken. The Force shall free me." This philosophy fueled a never-ending cycle of strife and conflict. The Sith were not content with simply ruling in the shadows. They sought to bring their vision of power into the light. Yet, for all their ambition, the Sith were always bound by the same fatal flaw: their inability to trust one another. Each Sith Lord was a potential rival, each apprentice a threat to their master. The Sith were driven by a singular, destructive desire to rise above all others, to become the singular authority, the ultimate expression of power. And in that drive, they left behind a legacy of destruction, betrayal, and sorrow. Through the ages, the Sith maintained their obsession with the dark side, their drive to conquer death, and their thirst for eternal rule. From the tombs on Korriban to the shadowy depths of Coruscant, their story continued to unfold in the dark corners of the galaxy. For every Sith Lord who fell, another rose in their place, as if the dark side itself would not allow the Sith to die. It was a cycle of darkness, one that would never truly end, for the Sith were not just a people or a philosophy. They were an eternal presence, woven into the fabric of the galaxy itself. And in the darkest corners of the Force, their whispers could still be heard, waiting for the next soul to embrace their teachings and continue their quest for domination. In the end, the ancient Sith were not just villains but embodiments of a never-ending desire for power and immortality. Their story was one of tragic ambition, of souls consumed by their own darkness. The history of the Sith was one of inevitable rise and fall, a dance of darkness and betrayal that would continue for as long as the Force itself existed. And as the galaxy continued to turn, the Sith remained in the shadows, ever waiting, ever watching, until the time would come once again for them to rise. The Sith's relationship with the Force and their pursuit of knowledge and power transcended mere politics and warfare. Their philosophy reached deeply into the metaphysical and spiritual realms, with concepts that, to outsiders, seemed deeply unsettling or even impossible. The Sith were not only concerned with controlling the galaxy. They were preoccupied with their own immortality, the secret knowledge that could alter the fabric of existence itself, and the total subjugation of the weak to the will of the strong. Through rituals, forbidden magics, and the mastery of the dark side, they sought to unlock these truths, believing that their destiny was not merely to rule the galaxy, but to bend reality itself to their will. One of the core teachings of the Sith was the concept of the power of the dark side. To the Sith, the dark side was a tool, an extension of their own power that allowed them to dominate, control, and reshape their surroundings. Unlike the Jedi, who viewed the dark side as a force of corruption and destruction, the Sith saw it as a natural and necessary part of the universe. They believed that passion, anger, fear, hatred, and ambition was not to be suppressed but harnessed. It was through these emotions that the true strength of the dark side could be realized. Where the Jedi sought calm and serenity, the Sith embraced the chaos within them, believing that through the raw, untamed power of emotion, they could achieve their ultimate goals. The philosophy behind the dark side was further explored in the teachings of Sith Lords like Darth Bane and Darth Revan. Both men represented different aspects of the Sith approach to power and the Force. Darth Bane, for example, understood that the Sith had failed in the past due to their endless infighting. To survive, he realized the Sith needed a more focused, disciplined structure. Thus, he created the rule of two, the principle that only two Sith would exist at any one time, one master, one apprentice. The master would impart their knowledge to the apprentice, and the apprentice would eventually challenge the master, rising to take their place. The beauty of this system, according to Bane, was that it eliminated the constant civil war that plagued the Sith, while ensuring that the Sith would always remain strong through each generation. Darth Revan, on the other hand, was a figure defined by his internal conflict. Revan was a former Jedi Knight who fell to the dark side, only to later rediscover his connection to the light side. His story was one of redemption and loss, of a man torn between two sides of the Force, unable to reconcile his own desires for power with the duties of being a Jedi. His journey mirrored the struggles of many Sith Lords, obsessed with power, yet tormented by the price they had to pay. Revan's ultimate failure, however, was not in his fall to the dark side but in his inability to see beyond his own limitations. Even as he sought to defeat the Sith, he remained bound by the same lust for power that had originally led him to embrace the dark side. This internal war became a defining feature of Sith philosophy. Their conflict was not only with the Jedi but with themselves, as each Sith Lord wrestled with their own motivations and desires. The idea of immortality was perhaps the most intriguing pursuit for many Sith Lords. Legends and rumors told of Sith Lords who had achieved unimaginable feats, including creating entire armies of undead warriors or existing beyond physical death as powerful spirits. Many sought the secret to eternal life, believing that through Sith alchemy, they could transcend their mortal limitations and live forever, untouched by the ravages of time. Darth Plagueis, in particular, became obsessed with this notion, experimenting with the very essence of life. His studies were aimed at achieving complete control over death, to the point of being able to prevent it from claiming anyone, including himself. His work was so extreme that it eventually led to his downfall. His inability to trust anyone, even his own apprentice, Darth Sidious, led to his ultimate assassinate.